So hi everybody, my name's Tibra. I'm a fifth year PhD candidate in the department. I am technically co-advised by Marilyn Vandermeulen and Ankur Singh, but Ankur is now at Georgia Tech, so you will probably not know who he is. As far as what I am involved in, mostly I do a lot of work with the Diversity Programs and Engineering Office, so DPE, and I work with one of their undergraduate programs called the Ryan Scholar Program. And I meet with students and kind of like help mentor and coach them. They're all underrepresented minorities in engineering or first gen in engineering. Outside of DPE, I've worked with the Black Grad and Professional Student Association really heavily. And I am also a graduate student ambassador. So we help to try to recruit minority graduate students. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Oh, I should say I'm from South Carolina. So for anyone who is coming from a warm southern state and if you have questions about what it's like to survive Ithaca winters, I can also talk about that. I'm gonna pass it to Ruben.
Oh, good. Yeah, so my name is Ruben Trujillo. I'm a second year PhD student in David Putnam's lab. I'm originally from a small town in New Mexico, and it's a rural town. And I like to tell people that I'm from a rural town, and you can tell because of the way I pronounce rural. I'm always given a hard time of how I say it. Yeah, and like in terms of organizations, I usually just work with BMES. I did New Visions, mentoring high school students who are, kind of seeking out different college opportunities, as well as the Ithaca Science Center, just going to little towns around Ithaca and helping, children just learn cool science things. It's actually a lot of fun. You just like pick up the activity there on the spot. You got to learn a lot about it. And then you're like, cool, now I'm trying to teach all these little kids that are running around like what heat transfer is. And I don't know. So that's always a fun time. Yeah, that's me. Juan.
Hi guys, I'm Juan Boza. I'm a second year PhD student in David Erickson's lab. So we mainly do point of care diagnostics. I'm originally from Ecuador, but I lived like for 7 years in Florida. So likewise, if any of you wants to know more about like adapting to the cold, it's not as bad as you might think. I don't know. I don't have that much of an interesting life, so it's mainly like after COVID hit, I just been like trying to work as much as I can and trying to get as much as research done. So I'm gonna pass it to Maggie.
Hi, I'm Marguerite, or Maggie. I'm a second year PhD student in the Underwater's Perry lab. She's in mechanical engineering. I studied tendon regeneration. As an athlete in college, tendons aren't doing so well, so I study lots of tendon stuff and musculoskeletal things. And so I am from New Jersey originally. My family is from and lives in New Mexico now, so another New Mexican connection. And so outside of all of my research stuff, I'm involved in the Latinx student organization that we have on campus for grad students. BMES, I'm the vice president, and I work with Anna on stuff relating to BMES. I've been involved in the Graduate and Professional School Diversity Council and the Building Allyship series. I'm on the planning board of a group that essentially just tries to put on workshops of how we can all treat each other better and practical steps to causing positive change in our academic system. And then I just spotlight volunteering outreach stuff in different places. BMES is really great for resources to do that kind of thing. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all for me.
Does anyone have questions?
I have Belinda and Suzanne, are y'all gonna be here for this? Okay. Yeah, but any questions you have, you can put in the chat. Otherwise, we can like chat more about some of the work that we do, but we'd rather hear y'all's questions first.
I have a question. I don't know if anyone's like first gen on the call, but I am. And I was just curious to see like what your experiences are transitioning from like undergrad to grad school.
So I'm not first gen like undergrad, but I'm first gen grad school. So that I think in the transition from undergrad to grad was still like fairly difficult because, you know, in undergrad, like you're just taking classes and you have a curriculum to follow, and it's like, okay, you take these classes and you get your degree. Versus like coming into graduate school, there's so much more autonomy with like what you're doing on like day to day, especially like in your first year, because you're trying to figure out like what lab you want to join, as well as like figuring out what classes to take and like finding a balance between that. So I think that was the hardest thing for me, was figuring out how to go from like a very like class focused degree to a research focused degree. And then also like with my parents like not really understanding like how grad school and like how a PhD works, like having to consistently and constantly explain like, oh, you know, I can't come home during, you know, this break because like PhD students don't do that. So I mean, I think it's like a learning curve for them. And you know, like you try not to get frustrated when they don't understand. And you just try to explain, you know, as much as possible. Like, I mean, there's still things that I explain to my parents, even in my 5th year, you know, being a grad student. So I think those two transitions were probably the biggest for me.
I can go next.
Go for it.
Or
No, go.
Yeah.
I'll go after you, Juan.
all right. So yeah, for me, I guess the hardest thing from undergrad to grad school, mainly, I mean, it was like dealing with a lot of stuff that I wasn't dealing with before. Like when you're in undergrad, it's really easy to just deal with classes and stuff like that. But then you're in grad school, and now like classes are really not that important anymore. It's mainly like getting some results at the lab. And for that, a lot of times you have to like learn how to think. So that's really hard to do, especially in your first year where you're like, you know, transitioning from being told what to do to not being told what to do, especially when you're an undergrad, like, and they give you some assignment, like, you know what kind of results you're gonna get, or that you should get some result. But then when you're in grad school, it's just like a lot of stuff you try, it doesn't work because you don't really know if it's gonna work or not. And then with respect to like my personal life, I mean, dealing with my family as a first gen graduate student, grad school, in my family, it's like they still don't understand what a PhD is. They're still like just waiting to see like how much am I gonna make, or what is going on. Like they just don't understand. So it's really hard to deal with that.
Yeah, so I'm a first generation PhD student, and potentially at least in grad school too. I don't know if maybe some of my family's done grad school, but not in any STEM related fields. And so I think that's going off of what Tibro and Juan kind of touched on. It's like there's that learning curve for your family where you're trying to explain, like, you know, I'm essentially you're working now. It's a PhD is a job. And so it's treated very similarly, where your job is, you know, research focused and, you know, progressing your knowledge to help you in your next steps in life. And as far as a learning curve for you personally, I think an important thing is to just kind of build a network with those people in your lab, your PI, and especially people in your cohort and just in other, you know, class levels, second years, third years, senior students, because having a nice network to kind of fall back on when things don't work out really goes a long way, because research is different from classes. Like classes, if you don't understand how to do a problem, someone probably will, the professor will, but here you're trying to solve problems that no one's solved yet, right? That's the whole point of grad school. And so it gets frustrating. Like I spent a whole year trying to find out how to repeat one reaction that someone already published. And like, it took me a whole year to figure out how to do that, which like, it's like, it gets frustrating at times, but it's nice to have your friends, your family, just peers that you can talk to and brainstorm with. And I think that goes a long way.
I'm also in the same boat as pretty much everyone here. We're like not the first to go to college, first for PhD and first for like anything STEM as well. And my sister, my elder sister, was the first person in our family to also become an MD, so she could help me a little bit. But one of the things that I was kind of like told by a student group here, the first gen low income student group, FIGLY, first of all, run by amazing people. If you end up coming here, they're great. And if you end up going somewhere else, try and find a group because they are really helpful. But they talked about this thing called the hidden curriculum. And for me, coming from like a small undergrad institution, and then no one in my family had ever been like in a STEM profession before ever, I didn't realize that there were just like social norms and like professional norms that are never spoken about. And after like the third or fourth just like awkward interaction in which I had done apparently something wrong and just had no idea what was happening or that anything had happened, but then apparently there had been a miscommunication. Like it's hard, and it's hard seeing people around you navigate it like really flawlessly, and you're just kind of stumbling around a little bit because everything is so different from where you're from and what your experiences are. And so that's a learning curve too that has nothing to do with the science and everything else, but just like figuring out the social norms of a industry and a system that you've never been in before was hard. And being around other people who are like you and that they also don't quite know what they're doing, and finding really friendly people who are understanding and like take the time, especially older students, to explain like the norms, like how do you ask a professor this? How do you like, is this something that you're supposed to find out by yourself? Do you ask other people? What like channels do you go through for different things? Those are like soft information that is really, really, really helpful. And getting that either through older grad students or organizations like FIGLY, like they really try and like get that information to people so that the transition isn't as hard.
There's a question in the chat, and it says, how was it like in terms of getting used to life at Ithaca? Was it a pretty smooth process or did it take a lot of time? Does anyone else want to start instead of me?
I could start. I think 99% of the time for, 99% of people that come to Cornell, it's probably going to be a little bit of a transition unless you're, the 1% that maybe did your undergrad here and you live here, you already know what life in Ithaca is like. But, especially if this is your first time away from home, maybe not being close to family, there's things to get used to, but I think the BME community does a great job of, just trying to get together and help your transition be as smooth as possible. And it's a little different now with COVID, but like when we were able to like go out and hang out, I think our cohort was probably getting together at least those first few weeks, like almost every single day we were all getting together and like getting to know each other, going out and just doing different things. And so it's a nice way to help transition into your new life in Ithaca, essentially. And I would say, it's probably person dependent of how long it might take you to adjust. But like I said, it really comes back to, for me, to, the network that you really surround yourself with, and that helps your transition become a lot more smooth.
Yeah, I would echo that in terms of like our cohorts on the same cohort as Ruben, and we were hanging out a lot. I feel like within the first 2 weeks, we'd like planned like the first salsa night that like some of us were going to go to, and then like probably happening concurrently for those that don't like, I don't know, partying as much. There was like a D&D group that kind of sprung out of some people in our cohort, and then they also had like group chat for like people who wanted to like do workouts together and stuff. So there was an adjustment in the sense that like this is kind of the farthest away from a big city that I've ever lived. I'd never been part of a big campus before. But the adjustment was made a lot smoother simply because like our cohort is, I don't know, I feel like our cohort's really inclusive and they try super hard to like make sure that like everyone would find an event where they were comfortable being. And then like once you join a lab, which is a few months later, like my lab is also full of really good people who I like hanging out with. And there's also this thing called the Big Red Barn. And so it's basically like where all the grad students can hang out. There's like study spaces or study times in the Big Red Barn. There's snacks, there's $1 beers and $3 wines on Fridays. And so I also made a lot of friends outside of my department, which is great. Like love BME, but also it's good to get out of your department. And so having other people around in like different fields also really helped the adjustment, because I got to like expand and like do all the things that I like doing, because I found so many more people, so many more different people to do it with. So that really helps too.
Yeah, I'll just kind of retweet what's already been said. So my first semester was a little difficult for me personally, like just things weren't working how I wanted them and how I thought they were going to work. So I would literally just like come home and like just be by myself, eat ramen and watch Criminal Minds. And then I realized that that was not healthy. So I actually started hanging out with people in my cohort. So there are 3 other girls who are in my cohort that I became close with, and every week we would get together and watch Grey's Anatomy, because 2 of the girls were roommates. So we would go over to their house and just watch Grey's and talk about, just talk shit about what happened that week, what someone said or what, just have fun and like vent. And that like really helped me get through my first semester and my first year. And then my second year, I really got involved in the Black Graduate and Professional Student Association. And like those people in that organization really just became my family. And a lot of the stories that I hear with people within like BGPSA is like, their first semester, their first year was really tough because they like didn't find their community. So like, it's just, I think the transition is so much easier if you find your community early on, whether that be within your cohort or like Maggie said, meeting people outside of the department. Just find a group of people that like you really click with, that like you can just go to, whenever you're not having a good day, or if you need to vent, or if you just want to have fun and like go out, get ice cream or go to wineries or whatever. Just have like, get that early on and don't wait until it's like, too late almost.
Yeah, I would agree with everything. I'm getting feedback. All right. So I would agree with everything everybody has said. Like definitely, like if you decide to come here or wherever you go, like definitely rely on your cohort, because in the end, like you're all together and you're all experiencing similar, similarly. So in the end, like what really helped me a lot was that Cornell is really really diverse and is really nice in the sense of that everybody is there. Like there's a group for everything. So technically, like when I got here, like there was like different groups of people that do different things. So it's not like everybody just does one thing. So that's pretty nice, because then you get to like see where you fit the best. And then you get to that. So as Steve said, like, it really depends on how fast you find this group. Sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it gets really cold. And then you just don't want to go out. But yeah, no, definitely like just like it wasn't that hard to get used to the new life.
I will say, I know all of us probably like mentioned, being friends with our cohort, but don't feel like you have to be friends with the people in your cohort. Like it is totally okay to like not be friends with them, like if you don't hang out with the people in your cohort, like that's not a bad thing. So everyone's coming from different, backgrounds, and like everyone might not understand like you as an individual. And maybe, like I said, you need to go outside of the department or outside of your cohort to find that group of people. So like, don't feel bad or put yourself down because you feel like, oh, I'm not, close with my cohort. Like that's totally fine. And I think like Maggie said, I play intramural basketball. Well, I played intramural basketball when pre-COVID. And I also go to a gym that's like not at Cornell, and I do box fit. So you also find like friends through other avenues that way. So another question is, do you get to travel home during breaks? I say yes.
Yeah.
It's person dependent and lab dependent, I think.
Spring break isn't a thing anymore.
Yeah,
Like-
that's fair.
Yeah, like spring break, like, you know, for undergrad, like everyone goes home during spring break. Spring break isn't a thing anymore, but like we have like designated, like you have a minimum of this time off that you are allowed to take. I think it's or it's like 2 weeks guaranteed off. So like a lot of people, it's like they'll go home for like winter holidays, and then sometime when it's like warm and they want to like, I don't know, travel because it's warm out. I feel like most people like can go home for the holidays. You know, COVID permissive. But yeah, like my PI, if we're like, hey, I'm making progress, I'm doing the grad school things, I also want to leave for a little bit, she's completely fine with that. If like your PI isn't letting you go home for the holidays, just don't go to that PI. Like whether it's at Cornell or somewhere else, also like you deserve time off. You're gonna be working your tail off in grad school. So like, yeah, time off is important. And for me personally, I've always felt like I am able to go home like if I want to, and then COVID makes it a little more complicated, but like, if I needed to, I feel like my PI would be like, okay, if you need to go home, go for it, and we'll do paperwork for it personally.
Yeah, I think that's an important question also, like when you're talking with PIs or like you're trying to figure out if you know, what PIs you are interested in, talk to their students and see what that PI's travel policy is. Like there are some PIs who literally make you like sign up on a calendar and say like, you know, I'm traveling these days and you only get those, you know, those 2 weeks that were guaranteed as grad students. And like Maggie said, there's other PIs who like, as long as you're getting your work done, like they don't care if you take the time off. I oftentimes take like weekend trips where I'll leave like a Thursday evening and then like come back Monday or something like that, like for driving trips. I think also a lot of PIs are very like cognizant that like not all of us are from like driving distance to home. So like for instance, like I have to fly to go home. So like I'm not just gonna go home for like a few days. Like I want, if I'm gonna make it worth my while, I need to be there for, you know, an extended period of time. So like actually this past winter break, I actually left for Thanksgiving and I did not come back until January. And like my PI was super fine with that, helped me figure out things that I could do remotely, and you know, still be making progress towards my degree while still being at home. So it's just definitely conversations to have.
Yeah, definitely. Feedback. All right. So definitely, like you have to talk to your PI. For example, my PI is results driven, which means as long as I'm getting my job done and I'm making progress, he doesn't really care if I'm in the lab or not. Which really is what I was looking for, and I talked to him before joining this lab. But in the end, like I mean, I get to go home like at least before COVID. I used to go home like about once a month. It wasn't that bad. I would go like for a weekend, 3-4 days a month. I would spend it at home, so that was really nice. But yeah, no, definitely like that. Plus the holidays, like it really helped me adapt here and really survive. And then depending on the PI, I've seen people that have gone for like 3-4 weeks home, especially people who live overseas. That it makes no sense for them to go for a week, since it takes like 2 days just to get there. So some of them tend to go for like 3-4 weeks.
Yeah, and just to add on top of that, it's just, you know, you might be sort of nervous to ask your PI for time off because, you know, you're a PhD student and you're technically supposed to be doing research, but, you know, you still have family to go see. You still have, you know, it's important for your mental health to be able to go home and, you know, see family. So I think a lot of PRs are very understanding of that, and they respect that. So you might be nervous to ask, but you know, it's definitely a good thing to just, you know, make sure that you and the PI are understanding of each other, of what you both kind of expect for time off and going home?